Today's clash between Man U and Arsenal is the main fixture in 20 minutes on BBC One, Match of the Day. The news and today's other sporting action now on BBC One with Peter Sissons and Rob Bonnet.
Liberal Democrats warn the party leadership about getting too close to New Labour. Paddy Ashdown's constructive opposition is backed, but activists claim they've tied his hands on future coalition. The Amazon fires, how an area twice the size of Wales is being ravaged. And England's bowlers give their side a chance of victory in the Barbados Test. The Liberal Democrat leader Paddy Ashdown and party activists each claimed victory today after a heated debate on the party's relations with Labour. At their spring conference in Southport, Liberal Democrats voted to back the official policy of constructive opposition, or working with the government on policies with which they agree. But they also forced the leadership into consulting the members on any new deals. Mr. Ashdown says a future coalition is a possibility. From Southport, our political editor, Robin Oakley.
The Liberal Democrat leader, who'd like to end the tribalism of British politics with yet closer cooperation with Labour, has warned his party they must accept the logic of campaigning for proportional representation and be ready one day to think of joining a coalition. But there were warning shots across his bows from those suspicious of any more formal links with Labour.
The only way that the voice of the many of us and the overwhelming majority at the LDYS conference a fortnight ago, who've seen what Labour are like in government, what their Tory policies are doing, and to those of us who just don't like them, to say, up your coalition, Tony.
Tony Blair does not give cabinet places out of the kindness of his heart. We must beware of his possible ulterior motive to try and muzzle us.
Key voices argued that working with the government where they agreed had delivered policies the Liberal Democrats wanted.
Please, conference, do not manacle the hands of our leadership on that issue, because it would be entirely to the good of the country, our party and ourselves if we were to permit some discussion on issues of that kind.
Mr. Ashdown reckons he's turned the tide and convinced his party to be more open-minded on coalition.
I'm delighted by today's debate. It shows the increasing maturity of the party. It shows its self-confidence, and it shows that it is ready to play its role in the most interesting period of politics we have seen for the best part of half a century.
But though delegates did vote for constructive opposition, they forced a leader marching ahead of his troops to consult the party formally on any further deals. Coalition remains a distant dream. Robin Oakley, BBC News, Southport.
Firefighters in northern Brazil are tackling some of the worst forest fires ever seen in the Amazon region. Rain isn't forecast for several weeks and helicopters are being used to drop water on the area. A quarter of the thickly forested state of Roraima, an area of 40,000 square miles, is either on fire or in ashes.
Strong winds have fanned the flames through an area twice the size of Wales. The rainforest is a natural tinderbox. There's been a 5-month drought in northern Brazil. The lives of poor farmers are devastated. They're salvaging what they can, but food is already in short supply. So is hope. What do we do now, the farmers ask. In only 24 hours, this woman says, everything we worked for 5 years was destroyed. Rich pasture is also burning. 12,000 heads of cattle have been lost. Water to douse the flames is coming from neighbouring Venezuela, but there are few fire crews with little equipment to fight fires which have long been out of control. Now the flames are encroaching on the villages of some of Brazil's indigenous Indian tribes. It's a complex natural disaster. There are prayers for rain, but none is forecast until April. Jane Standley, BBC News.
Police in Cheshire have begun an investigation after the body of a newborn baby boy was found near a theme park. A post-mortem examination of the body, which was found near Gulliver's World in Warrington, revealed that the baby did not die of natural causes. Police say they're trying to trace the mother who may need urgent medical treatment.
We would urge her to come forward. She is obviously going to be distressed, regardless of the circumstances of this birth. We want her to come forward so that she can get the medical treatment she will obviously need, and so that she can talk to us and tell us exactly what did lead to this unfortunate death.
President Clinton has said he may visit Northern Ireland in May if there's real progress in the multi-party talks. Mr. Clinton has invited leaders from all sides, including the Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams, to a St. Patrick's Day party at the White House on Tuesday. Our Ireland correspondent Dennis Murray reports from New York.
The voices of young Protestants and Catholics united. Children from Portadown, one of Ulster's flashpoints, together at a gala at New York's Plaza Hotel. They sing together at home, but sometimes unity abroad feels easier, and it's a symbol of sorts about how the problems shrink away from home. The Do was Irish America's Top 100. Sinn Féin rubbed shoulders with loyalists. The tone set for Northern Ireland's politicians for a week in America, set round St. Patrick's Day. The United States President hinted that he'll visit Northern Ireland again if there's agreement at the peace talks.
The next 60 to 90 days are very, very important. And we have to do everything we can to try to get the parties together to move in a timely fashion.
All but one of the parties involved in the Northern Ireland talks are here for a week. Agreement still difficult and the problems unchanged, but a change of atmosphere which can only help.
Fewer than 1 in 10 male sixth formers would consider teaching as a career, according to a new survey. In contrast, 1 in 4 girls from the same age group were interested. The survey highlights the continuing recruitment crisis in teaching. A video aimed at attracting young people into the profession and featuring the Prime Minister is to run in cinemas and on TV.
Alison, Don Potter, Gordon Valens.
This is the latest attempt to persuade graduates to enter teaching by showing that even the famous remember their favourite teacher, and with a starring role for the Prime Minister.
Eric Anderson.
His unprecedented appearance in this advert, which will be shown on television next month, shows just how seriously the government views the shortage of teachers.
Noel O'Neill. And we see the Protestant ascendancy that I've described.
The latest figures show the extent of teaching's image problem. This year, recruits for secondary schools are 18% below their target. And a new survey by the Teacher Training Agency shows that while 4 in 10 girls considered teaching as a future career, only 1 in 10 of their male classmates thought the same.
We are very concerned by the fact that so few young men would consider teaching as a profession. What we need to do now is get the message across to them that the profession does offer the characteristics that young people tend to be looking for.
Some teaching unions believe the lack of male teachers may explain why girls continue to achieve far better results than boys at school.
I'm sure the absence of the male teacher in the primary school must mean that for many young boys, they simply don't equate education with being male, and that's a disaster.
The government's spending millions of pounds trying to attract graduates into teaching. But if men continue to avoid the classroom, the Teacher Training Agency has warned that by 2010, the male primary school teacher may no longer exist. Simon Cox, BBC News at the Department for Education.
The families of the victims of the Dunbar tragedy have attended a service to dedicate a garden in their memory. The memorial garden in Dunbar Cemetery is designed to reflect the joy of childhood. It was created with money donated after the shooting. 16 children and their teacher died in the tragedy 2 years ago, and their names are remembered on a plaque. European Union foreign ministers have agreed a compromise in the dispute over when and how Cyprus should be allowed to join the EU. The wrangle, which had left France and Greece at loggerheads, had threatened to disrupt the launch of enlargement negotiations with 5 other applicant countries at the end of the month. However, the problem may have only been postponed. France is still far from happy about admitting Cyprus, while it remains divided.
High over the Aegean Sea, military antagonisms between Greece and Turkey have become common practice. Here, Turkish jets hover virtually under the wing of a plane carrying the Greek defence minister on a recent visit to Cyprus. The divided island is a leading cause of tension between the two countries, tension which is undermining European Union efforts to bring Cyprus into the community. In Edinburgh, the Greek foreign minister has pushed his colleagues to the limit, threatening to block enlargement talks with all other applicant countries if membership talks for Cyprus are suspended because of its internal divisions. Britain believes it has reassured Greece and at least postponed the problem.
Today we have made progress on one front. That is welcome. It does not resolve all the problems between Greece, Cyprus and Turkey, but it is a very useful step forward. Some of these other issues are ones in which we'll have to see if we can make similar progress in the weeks and months ahead.
But the Greeks still insist Turkey's attitude to Cyprus must not affect the island's chances of membership.
It is, I think, unfair and contrary to whatever the community is trying all over the world to make Cyprus the hostage of a much bigger country which uses military violence as an argument.
And this convivial gathering has not removed the possibility of Greece vetoing the entire enlargement process if it doesn't get its way. The immediate crisis over EU enlargement has been averted, and detailed negotiations with 6 countries seem certain to start at the end of this month. But nothing here has resolved the fundamental disagreements over whether a divided country like Cyprus can ever be admitted into the European Union. David Eads, BBC News, Edinburgh.
And now with news of another good day for England in the 5th Test in Barbados and the rest of today's sport, here's Rob Bonnet.
Yes, England's bowlers have seized the initiative in the 5th Test in Barbados. By the close of today's 3rd day, England had a lead of 143 after dismissing the West Indies for 262 and then scoring 2 runs without loss in their 2nd innings.
Walking into both the ground and a controversy. England's captain Mike Atherton had been at the hearts last night of a fiery exchange after Philo Wallace had been dismissed LBW. As umpire Mitch Lee gave him out, England's captain appeared to add some comments of his own and emphasised them with a gesture, which was missed by most, but was captured by a photographer. Back on the pitch this morning, early success for England as Tufnell's spin accounted for night watchman Ian Bishop. But that only brought in Brian Lara, who announced his arrival like a man determined to make the most of the pitch. He failed to, though, nonchalance and Headley getting the better of him on 31. England had their big prize, and hopes of victory flickered again. Certainly Lambert seemed to think so, offering only one aggressive stroke in over an hour as he made his way to a laboured half-century. He went soon after to Caddick, leaving West Indies uncertainly placed on 164 for 4. England sensed a chance of a breakthrough and had it handed to them as Holder lost both his head and his wicket to continue Ramprakash's wonderful match. Then Chanderpaul, who'd just survived one chance, saw his luck turn horribly sour on 45. Umpire Nichols ruled Stewart's catch was good, but replay showed it had clearly been a bump ball. Williams followed cheaply, and when Fraser trapped Hooper, West Indies were in serious trouble. And if it hadn't have been for some entertaining hitting from Ambrose, they wouldn't have got past 250.
Well, after last night when Wallace and Lambert smashed it around and the way the boys have performed this morning, it's been absolutely terrific. They turned it around. We've bowled a much better line and length. We've stuck to a game plan. And it's paid off.
England's openers survived 2 testing overs before the close, and tomorrow morning they'll set out with a lead of 141 and a great chance to win this match. All that remains to be seen is if there's enough time for them to force victory. Kevin Geary, BBC News, Barbados.
Today's Premiership football programme was dominated by the match at Old Trafford between leaders Manchester United and second-placed Arsenal. That game and the fixture between Tottenham and third-placed Liverpool, plus Everton versus Blackburn, is featured on Match of the Day after this programme. If you don't want to know the results, then you should look away now. Meanwhile, Chelsea's Championship challenge has faltered again. They lost 2-1 at West Ham, for whom Trevor Sinclair scored his 5th goal in 6 games. At the bottom, 2 goals from Savo Milosevic helped Aston Villa to a 3-1 defeat of Crystal Palace, who are now 4 points adrift of Bolton, who beat Sheffield Wednesday 3-2, with an Alan Thompson penalty the deciding goal. And Barnsley are a further 4 points ahead after beating Southampton 4-3, a Neil Redfern penalty, the difference between the 2 sides. In Scotland, Hearts and Rangers both had the chance to close the gap on leaders Celtic, who play Dundee United tomorrow. Rangers' game against Motherwell is featured on Sportscene after the news, so if you don't want to know that score, then you should look away now. Hearts could only manage a 1-1 draw at home to Kilmarnock. Dave McPherson, the Hearts goal scorer. Sheffield Eagles are through to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup for the first time in their history after defeating Castleford by 32 points to 22. Centre Keith Senior and winger Matt Crowther both crossed the line twice. Castleford-born Crowther here running through for his second just before half-time. The 3 other quarter-finals are all played tomorrow. There was a shock first defeat of the season for Newcastle in Rugby Union's Allied Dunbar Premiership. They failed to go back to the top of the table, losing by 30 points to 17 at Richmond, who played almost 3/4 of the match without Scott Quinnell, who was sent off for foul play. Meanwhile, third-placed Bath kept their title hopes alive with a 16-5 win over Leicester. The home side's only try came straight from the second-half kick-off, Jeremy Guscott completing the break out of defence. League leaders Saracens play Gloucester tomorrow. The big race of the day, the Imperial Cup at Sandown Park, has been won by the Martin Pipe-trained Blowing Wind. Ridden by Tony McCoy for his 210th victory of the season, the 5-1 favourite came from behind over the final hurdle to surge into the lead. Peter Bromley takes up the commentary.
He looks as if he's just joined in the race, and Blowing Wind and Tony McCoy have gone away to snatch the Imperial Cup by a wide margin. Nothing else has a chance. There's going to be a photograph. I think that's...
And after his victory today, Blowing Wind could earn a £50,000 prize money bonus if he wins at the Cheltenham Festival later this week. Peter.
And that's the main news tonight. From everyone here in the BBC Newsroom, good night.
Having breakfast with Frost tomorrow morning at 8:30 on BBC One, John Prescott and Michael Portillo.
Good evening. We had some veritable spring-like weather in parts of the country today, where the sun popped out, temperatures up to 15, and in a Boyne, 16 Celsius. That's in Aberdeenshire. 16 Celsius is 61 degrees Fahrenheit in Old Money. Now, a similar sort of weather pattern, in fact, as we head into tomorrow. The only difference will be that there'll be approaching weather front coming into the far north of Scotland, and this later tomorrow will bring rather more rain, but just up here. Also a freshening wind across the far north, but for most of the country, very light breezes, and that means what cloud we've got will be, well, milling around really quite slowly. There will be some holes in the cloud, as we've seen during today, and where they keep going for any length of time tonight, probably in central and eastern districts of England, for example, well, where the holes are, we'll get some mist, some patchy fog again, and also perhaps just a touch of ground frost, though for most of us, temperatures will be too high for that tonight again. And on to tomorrow then, with a lot of clouds still holding around the west coast regions, a few patches of drizzle. Much like today, there will be some breaks developing, the mist clearing and some sunny spells breaking through in a few spots, but that wetter weather arriving in the far north of Scotland during the day. But as today, a mild day everywhere, but really feeling very mild indeed if the sun pops out. Bye-bye.